My name was Philip Harold Red Eagle. I'm named after my father and my grandfather and my great-grandfather. His name was Wambadi Duta, which translates Eagle Red, which got translated to Red Eagle. But when I was researching it at the Newberry in Chicago a number of years ago, I found out it was War Eagle. We don't use War Eagle, we use Red Eagle. I think my first art was probably in high school. I wrote a sonnet. And then I started taking pictures in Vietnam, and I picked up a 35 millimeter Canon QL, which is a little rangefinder. And I carried it around with me. Other guys called me Picture Man. Picture Man, here's the Picture Man. And then I didn't have any real contact with art until UW, University of Washington, Seattle. I took a carving class with Marvin Oliver. And I got so interested in art that I started taking art classes. And I'd finished a degree in journalism already, so I shifted over to art. Well, as a political act, I started the Raven Chronicles, more from the journalist point of view, as a trained journalist. At the same time, I was processing Vietnam. And so I wrote a short story, which I published in the Seattle Arts Commission newsletter. I was honing my photography, and I was honing my writing skills. And the original manuscript was short stories. Well, the publisher wouldn't publish short stories. So I had to sit down. It took me 4 years to rewrite it into 2 novellas, which are fiction. And the material came from my own experience and from the experience of this vets group that I was in. 92, I met my friend Tom Heidelbaugh, who got me interested in the cultural movement. He was dying of cancer, Tom Heidelbaugh, but he wanted to have this legacy of bringing culture back. So he was just feeding me, and I was just empty, being filled up. Most Native people the bulk of them are urban, and we were raised urban in public school systems, my age. My mother and father went to Indian school. So we were basically cut off from our culture, but it created an absence, because here we were walking around as Native people, not white, and not black, and not Asian, very little identity, very little cohesion. And so we missed being who we supposedly were. So we wanted to, in 1978, of August 1978, Congress passed the Native American Freedom of Religion Act. It took a while to catch, but by the late 80s, early 90s, we're kind of reaching in. Some of the reservations had already been involved. They'd been secretive about their culture and hid it, so they had more access to it. So they adjusted fairly quickly. But a lot of the urban people like myself didn't adjust very well. We saw the absence, we felt the absence in our own selves. We stumbled upon the answer for our process. We wanted to have a process which was guided, basically, in a way, by philosophy or, tradition. But we didn't know how to do it. And then in '93, we discovered that we needed to reintroduce ourselves to ceremony. And everything would be ceremony. It would be a ceremonially and guided process of re-education into our cultures. And we started using the canoe as the vessel for that. Our first year in '95, we had 3 canoes and 50 people in our program. The next year we had nearly 300 people and 7 canoes. And in '98 we had 21 canoes and 1,000 people. And so now it's up to about 124, 25 canoes and 10,000 people. And it's spreading, because we have Maori people here, we have Japanese people, Filipinos, East Coast Indians are coming out and experiencing it. It's just amazing to watch the kids pick it up. and they're already speaking. They're being told, Salish, taught the Salish language or their own home languages, wherever they're from. And they're just jumping into it. They're just folding into it. It's not even an effort almost. It's just they're there and they're in canoes. When I was growing up, we didn't do that, We weren't taught the language because there were repercussions for doing that. There weren't any real repercussions, but there were for my mother and my father. And they were physically abused, for that. And my dad's a fluent speaker, or was a fluent speaker. And he used to speak all the time. And then we'd go back to Montana and all the aunties would speak. So I learned how to I could understand it, but I didn't speak it myself. The Dakota language, my father's people. My role with the canoe movement is having established this pattern with Tom back in the 90s and doing the ring ceremony, the copper ring ceremony. It's a contract ceremony for how we're going to conduct ourselves on a canoe journey. And it's very precise and covers a lot as well, the 10 rules. So I do that. I've done about several hundred ring ceremonies with one person to up to 400 people. And I've made about 8,000 rings. I've been doing it for 25 years now. Because we want to keep the balance in the process, so people don't get away with thinking that they're not rules. There are guidelines. We're carrying on the influence of a lot of people in the 80s and 90s and who had all of these reculturation processes in emerging out of culture. And we had to put it back together and fold it back together again. And Tom was dying and it frustrated him so much that he wasn't going to be around. So we had that conversation. I said, we're all going to die, and what we're doing is going to take 7 generations to do. We'll all be long gone by the time we reach that point at which we can say, yes, we have a culture, and we're bicultural. Just to get to bicultural, it's going to take 7 generations because of the presence of non-native people. And you're not going away. I don't think you are, unless you all go to space.
Paige Pettibon Seedsta, Salish Chud, Tol Al Salih Sali. My name is Paige. I am Salish. I am from Tacoma.
Sam Pettibon Teesta, a Teed Bad, Tol Al Salih Sali.
My dad's name is Sam Pettibon. He is from Tacoma.
Chris Hayward Pettibon Seesta, a Seed Skoy, Salish Seed Skoy, Tol Al Salih Sali.
My mom's name is Chris Hayward Pettibon. She is Salish. She is from Tacoma. In Indian country, we try to explain our family and who we are because we're all related, and that gives the person that we talk to an understanding of where we come from, our heritage and our family, and that helps them gauge whether they're related to us and how they are related to us. The Tulshutsi language is really important to me. They say that the languages are going extinct. I like to think that they're sleeping and we just need to waken them up. I found that learning the language has helped me look at this land, the Puyallup land, in a different way. I look at the birds and the trees, and I feel like I understand their story better now that I learned the language. I love to paint and draw portraits. I think that people gravitate towards a face and they feel a connection with a face. I try to incorporate my Indigenous culture into the work that I do. I feel like we still look at classical, European style as like formal art. There's a lot of fair-skinned portraits of males, you know, displayed in a certain way, and then also females displayed in another way, which is not necessarily the way we want to be represented as well. So I like to show femininity without being over-sexualized, and I like to have it be empowering for people, and I want it to have people think about like a different perspective and just be like, oh yeah, you know, I see myself in that, or you know, I can relate to this, or I never saw this before. You know, I want them to interpret it, you know, to really just think about like where they fit in. I did a print. It's a two-tailed mermaid, but she's indigenous, and so it's kind of a play with like the Starbucks two-tailed mermaid. I want her to be a water warrior. You know, I made up my own story of what a two-tailed mermaid could be for the Salish Sea. So yeah, it's just my interpretation. I like to put my heritage in it, and you know, as also being African American too, having my heritage be represented is really important. And also, I get really inspired by my family as well, so I'll do portraits of my family. And of course, my nieces and nephews love it, and they think I'm like a superhero artist. They introduce me as their artist aunt, which I really like. I do like to paint brown people, just because I want us to be represented. I do pass as like a light-skinned person, and I do understand that I get away with some of those privileges that light-skinned people do, and I don't necessarily want to be the voice of anyone but myself and my ancestors and my, you know, immediate family, but I do recognize that brown folks don't always get represented the way that they want to. Although now I think that there is a lot of wonderful artists that are all shades of brown that are being acknowledged, which I really appreciate. Yeah, so we met at Tacoma Studio Tours here at Alma Mater, and that was a really good weekend for me. I noticed how captivating you were. I don't think people get to see wood carvers that often, and to see a carver in a space like this, I think people were just really captivated by you. I actually wanted to make my first paddle this year. We're starting a new canoe family. I've never paddled before. I've gone to Canoe Journey, but I've never paddled.
Are you going to do it with the Puyallup?
Puyallup Language Department.
Okay.
So our goal is to speak mostly Lushootseed on the whole trip.
Good.
So, well, last year was the first time I actually did protocol with the Puyallup tribe. So protocol is where we're dancing and we're singing, and we give gifts to different tribes that host us and have us for the evening. And Puyallup hadn't hosted in about 20 years, was it? Do you know?
1998. Yeah.
Yeah.
20 years.
20
exactly.
years.
Yeah, I think we had 11 canoes back in 98.
And how many
Big
was
difference
it?
now is 124.
Yeah.
Yeah, just things have changed quite a bit from when we started. It was just around a campfire. We'd tell stories, and things began to grow, and we didn't have anything basically to start with, a few songs and ideas mostly. The young people, the kids just pick it up and they run with it, and so it's normal for them. But it was still pretty abnormal for us older people, because we always think it's against the law, or it's forbidden, or like it used to be.
Yeah, my mentor told me to always keep your paddles wet because they once dried out, and we want to keep them wet, so let's keep those traditions alive.
Yeah, I'm glad all of those traditions came back, and all those songs. We had a few of the older songs, but in the late 90s, a lot of the young men and women were creating new songs, and that was the beauty part of it, was the new songs. The young people, that's what it was supposed to be about for us. Mm-hmm. Not just bringing back the old, but creating a new way of life, a new way of living.
I definitely learned a lot last year. I made my first regalia. So I made a wool skirt and I wove it, and then I also made 2 cedar vests.
Wow.
And I'm studying and just trying to create something that is traditional and looks good to my abilities. And I was really happy with them. They looked really good. It felt really good to do something like that, and to make it for someone and to have it be shared at Canoe Journey.
Amazing that all this stuff just came out of the woodwork. All of these, they just suddenly appeared and we were doing them. And so it shows the amount that was hidden, or people were doing way in the background, and all of a sudden they could bring it out to the front and do it.
Yeah.
So doing native art is really a big thing, and especially doing it in public and bringing it out and using it. Everything we've made, we've used.
Yeah.
That's why, I don't make wall-hanging paddles, even though some of them wind up that way.
Yeah.
I like them to go into the water. So I say, take it out of the water and rub it, slosh it around in the water every once in a while and oil it up every year.
Yeah. There's kind of like this moral dilemma of like, who am I making art for? Who understands the value of the materials that I'm using, So I always have that dilemma of like, making stuff for, someone who is going to appreciate and understand the story of where it came from.
Mm-hmm. Especially the story. Story is really important with everything.
It is, yeah.
And that's what this is all about. It's about story. That's what these beads are for. They're about story. That one bead, you should be able to pick it and be able to tell this very long story about how it was that year when you did it.
Now I see a great push of, bringing these, like just awakening, not necessarily bringing them back, but awakening them and holding on to them and sharing them with our community members. Learning the language has really helped me see the value in that. I mean, it doesn't translate perfectly. Tulshutseed in English doesn't translate. Yeah. My mind thinks only in Tulshutseed sometimes because it doesn't translate. Yeah. And I think about the people that, put these traditions before me, and now I have it, and how I need to strengthen my skills, and so I can pass those on.
Right. Yeah, that's good. I think it's, as we go through the generations of recovery, we're going to see more beauty coming out. More, the young people are going to be more in that direction. They're going to be more in line with that than we were, because we were basically way outside of it. And getting it back it's been a dream, because I remember growing up here how empty it felt. Because here we were supposed to be Native American, or Indian, as we used to call us back then.
Yeah.
And not being Indian, just being a different person of color.
Yeah.
And now we're going to be able to say, yeah, I'm still a my grandfather was this person. And we talked about it coming back in 7 generations. Mm-hmm. At 7 generations, we would actually be bicultural. Would be Americans on one hand and natives on the other. We're nowhere near it now. We're like urban Americans and, and a little slice of Native America over here.
Yeah.
And I really want to go back. I really thought about those days of what it would be like, and wondering if we'd still be around, if human beings would still be around when those 7 generations are complete. Yeah. Well, I'm glad I'm learning this from you. Very interesting to talk to a much younger person.
Yeah, and I want to thank you too, for taking your time and your words and being really thoughtful with what you say, and for all the work that you've done. For someone like me, I don't take that for granted. Good. That the people of your generation, have really paved the way for people like me. I wanted to gift you this. I made that for you.
Oh. Beautiful.
Thank you. It's a little pseudo bow.
You caught me. I don't have anything.
That's okay. You gave me your words.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Thank you.